Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference. I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. I am so excited about what is going to be a series with a man by the name of Eddie Capparucci. Now, Eddie has written a book. And Eddie, tell our audience the name of the book.
Susan, the name of the book is Going Deeper, How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction.
Yes, and this book is a very valuable book because it has all kinds of issues concerning sex, porn addictions, and all kinds of recovery issues so that the audience who is interested in learning about this subject matter is really going to have a great time and they're going to be educated. And the first part of the series is called The Destructive Nature of Sex and Porn Addictions. And this is show number 1 out of 4. And the issue with sexual addiction and pornography is a very, very serious subject. And our guest is going to talk about that. So, Eddie, the first question that I have for you is, what is sexual or porn addiction?
Well, Susan, a sexual addiction or pornography addiction occurs. We define it by when people's lives are taken over by their obsession for sex and a compulsive nature to act out sexually, whether it is using pornography or engaging in other more aggressive behaviors. What happens is a person who's dealing with a sexual or pornography addiction is going to have an impact on their social life, their relationships, and perhaps maybe impact even their work relationship or their ministry if they have some sort of religious calling.
Yeah. What's the prevalence of such an addiction? I mean, we talk about and we hear about this in movies. Sometimes you read about it, but you don't really believe that it exists to the point that it's really an addiction. Now, you must have some information about this. How did you start?
Yes.
Let's also talk about that.
Statistics are varied because, again, there aren't too many people who are out there who are going to admit that they're dealing with a sexual addiction. But it's estimated that anywhere between 3 and 5% of the U.S. population is dealing with a sexual addiction or pornography addiction. In fact, actually, there's been some data that says it could be up to 6 to 8%. The bottom line is we're talking anywhere from 10 to 18 million Americans who are struggling with this. Some of the statistics that we see is that about almost 5 million people spend an average of 11 hours or more looking at pornography each week. And 63% of men between the ages of 18 and 30 would say that they look at porn several times a week, maybe 2 or 3. So as you can see, it is not something that is just a minor problem, and in fact starting to become an epidemic. And the reason being is because now, years ago, when I was growing up, if I was going to see pornography, I had to stumble across it, all right? I mean, because it just wasn't readily available. Today, with the click of a mouse, you will be launched into a deep world of pornography. And what's happening, unfortunately, is our children are being exposed to this. Children as young as 6, 7 years old. In fact, right now they are estimating that the average age that a child comes across pornography is 10. These kids are learning about sex through porn. They're not learning about it from their parents or school or anything like that. They're learning it through pornography. And so little boys are getting the message that it's okay to objectify little girls, and little girls are getting the message it's okay to be objectified. And this problem is just going to continue to erupt until we do something where we can put a limit on making sure that our young kids cannot have access to pornography.
What do you attribute to the fact that this has grown to the extent that it has? I mean, is it something that always took place, but we didn't have the computer and we didn't have this digital world that we live in, and so it was probably swept under the rug, wasn't it? I'm just curious, because why now?
Well, I think what happened what happened, we became a very sexualized country. I think back Europe, if you look in Europe, you're probably going to find there were more instances of sexual addiction than here in the U.S. And with the dawning of the sexual revolution in the 60s, where we started to become desensitized to it, and because it was available, this now became a new outlet for people who have an addictive nature to run away from. So therefore, instead of running to perhaps alcohol or drugs or television, now sex became an option for them, or even work. Sex became an option, and they jumped into viewing sex more often, and now it becomes a problem for them.
You know, Eddie, the other thing I'm interested in is there any kind of relationship or connection between something that a genetic kind of background, that the father or the mother was sexually addicted and the child somehow or another has that, I'm going to call it a gene. Maybe this sounds ridiculous, but, you know, I'm just curious, because usually there's a predisposition for taking alcohol or drugs. And in this case, I'm just curious whether or not sexual addiction fits this role as well.
There could be a correlation, but the correlation won't be from a genetic standpoint, such as alcohol or drugs. What you're going to have here is an environmental factor, right? So therefore, let's say a father has pornography around the house and leaves it around. His kids can stumble across it, and they see it very early. So therefore now it becomes, that they have the access to it, and that could start to become a problem. If perhaps, let's say, you know, a mother or father is sexually promiscuous, and, you know, and I've had clients where they've told me that their mom or their dad have taken them with them when they went to go meet, you know, one of their lovers somewhere. When you're in that kind of environment, you're taught that sex is not a big deal. And they have to also remember that a lot of what goes on with a sexual addiction is about your emotions and the fact that you are trying to escape from emotional distress. That is why, if you look at almost any addiction, at the core of it, it is people who cannot sit with emotional pain. And in many cases, they don't even know what their emotional pain is that they're trying to run away from.
Yeah. You know, Eddie, yesterday I did an interview on the subject of love. And the person who I interviewed talked about loving oneself. Is sexual pornography and addictions really hating oneself? Because there's no, well, how would I put this? There's no emotional tie to these people who are doing this. I mean, they don't even know, you know, who the person is on the computer. It's just this sex itself, not the feeling, not the emotion, not the love that they should be having. Do you kind of get what I'm trying to
Absolutely.
show here?
Susan, there's a lot of shame that comes with all of this. You know, these people feel very, very shameful. And yes, if you go to the core, in many cases, there's a lot of self-loathing, feeling that I'm not good enough. So therefore, that is something that we have to work with them at in order to be able to start to teach them to separate their identity from the behavior. You know, the behavior, yes, the behavior's wrong, the behavior's bad, but they're not bad. But see, they've been fed somewhere along the line that there is something wrong with them. Everyone who comes into my practice, anyone that I've dealt with when it comes to a sexual pornography addiction, what is at the root cause is some sort of emotional pain that they suffered as either a child, an adolescent, or a teenager. And they did not process it. Nobody was there to help them process those early pains and say, hey, you know what? I went through that too. It's not unnormal. I can help you with this. They had to figure it out themselves. And the problem with kids being egocentric, which basically means they take it on and they say, I'm the problem. What they'll do is say, ooh, I don't really know how to fix this. So what do? Let me run away from it. Let me go find something to distract myself. Let me go play. Let me go watch TV, go read, whatever it is. But I can't sit with this emotional pain because I don't know how to make it go away. Well, guess what? As adults, they continue to do that. And what they'll do is they'll latch on to something. Like, for example, some people may latch on to food. Okay, I can't sit with this pain. Oh, let me go eat something. Ooh, that tastes really good. Let me eat more of it. And that's how in many cases you find different food addiction. Some people the kids at the age of 13, 14, they may start smoking marijuana because they see, oh, guess what? My anxiety is going down. It's a great escape for me. And they find that sex, and it is a very powerful distraction.
So that's the consequence of the addiction, turning to something else to try to avoid the feeling or the emotion so that they could get rid of it. When should there be? And I guess, from my point of view, there should be, but I don't know whether this exists. And that is courses or classes that deal with this, horrible disease, if you will, or addiction in high schools, perhaps in colleges. Have you come upon anything where they're teaching or they're giving these people who are so curious about this particular subject matter an opportunity to learn a little bit more about it?
Yes, there are several different organizations out there that what they are, they're just advocates for children to prevent them from having to deal with pornography. Fight the New Drug is one of those organizations, and they go out to schools and they'll talk about the harmful effects of pornography, the effect it has on your brain, that it alters your brain chemistry, that it will prevent you from learning how to become emotionally engaged with people. And you'll instead want to just be physically engaged. And you'll think, oh, well, that's love. That's a relationship. And it's not. So therefore, relationships are never fulfilling or complete. So yes, there are those. But the bigger problem we have is that parents are giving their kids too much freedom. You got the computer in their room. They go in there. They shut the door after dinner. Nobody goes to check on them. Nobody knows what they're doing, what they're up to. And with that kind of carte blanche approach to parenting, it's like giving your gun, a loaded gun, and just letting them just play with it. Because what you're doing, they're learning that sex is not that gift that God gave us, that we use not just to create children, but also to strengthen a relationship between two individuals. They're learning that sex is nothing more than a physical act, and that is something that I use to distract myself from emotional pain.
Yeah, what a great analogy that you've just given us. The other thing is, I want you to walk us through one of your workshops, somebody or just how do you do this? Or do you have just a client and yourself as a professional doing therapy, if you will? How does it work, and how do they get to you?
Well, they find me because I'm all out there on the internet. I'm considered one of the leading authorities here in Georgia in the area of sexual addiction. So I have a fairly large presence. And in fact, I just had somebody call me from Australia the other day. So it's kind of funny to get calls from all over the country, and now they're starting to come in from all over the world. But what we do in therapy to begin with is to try to first and foremost put things in place that can help people become stable. And that would mean we're putting accountability software on their devices. We're sending them to a support group meeting. We're having them get a sponsor. We're trying to do the things they need so that in the front, they're not having relapses. But the real heavy lifting of therapy is when I have them go deeper. I'm having them try to figure out, why has sex or porn taken over my life? What went on that I ran this in the first place? And through that kind of discovery, and they drill down and start to see all of the various points that they suffered when they were children, adolescents, and teenagers. And what happened is they developed a defense mechanism, and that defense mechanism was run away, escape. And as I said to you before, they found that sex is a wonderful escape tool. So what we do is we try to identify, okay, what are the core emotional triggers that will activate those past pain points? And when somebody knows what they are, what's that?
Yeah.
When somebody
go on, Eddie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. When somebody knows what their core emotional pain points are, like maybe, for example, I feel invisible. If someone were to make them feel invisible, it takes them back to a time when they were younger, where they always maybe felt very left out, and therefore not wanting to sit here and feel that I'm being left out again. It's like the compulsive nature. Let me grab my phone and start looking at porn or getting on a date app or something like that. So, but they don't realize that. Nobody's aware of it. And what I do is I make them aware of what the pain points are that activate their addiction. So that's what we try to do. And then once they have that, then they need to learn to be mindful, which is, again, something that people with addictions are not very good at. But they need to be mindful of what are the things that are going to activate my addiction. So now they're being very aware. They're being very aware, and they're looking around constantly to see, am I being activated?
Yeah. What's the third and the fourth trigger points that you give to your patients?
Yeah, well, there's all kind of trigger points for people. I mean, it depends, again, and they're different, and that's part of what the book is that I created about the inner child. What it does in there, it actually identifies various trigger points because, again, as I said, people come in and they have no idea. They think, the reason I look at porn or I have a sexual addiction is just that I'm a pervert or I'm a bad person. There's something wrong with my brain. And the fact of the matter is, no, that's not what it is. You have trauma. You have past traumas. And traumas don't all have to be these big things. They can be small things, or not small, but the idea that you were left out or that you were bullied. And you know what? About 90% of the people who come in here to see me, they've been bullied in their lives.
Wow.
And that is a very important thing, because that means they felt like they were outsiders. They felt weak, maybe. So understanding those things. So now if they feel like they come across somebody who's a very strong, dominant personality, they're going to feel a little uneasy and not know why they're even feeling that way. And then it's like, I don't want to be around this person, run off and escape. Once they start to understand what those triggers are, what those pain points are, now they can manage it. But they can say, guess what? What's happening today is not a repeat of the past. This is very different, and I can deal with this.
Yes, that's really fascinating, and it really gives these people who have this addiction hope, because it's so necessary to have hope that what you're dealing with and what you're feeling and all this negative stuff going on there's like getting out of a black tunnel. And I think that that's important, and somebody like yourself can help them do that. Now, the other point that I wanted to make is about sex trafficking, and I want to know whether that is increasing. We read about it, and we hear about it, and we see it even in movies. There's a lot of information out there that sex trafficking is increasing, and I'm just curious whether that is the case.
It is the case. It is increasing. Unfortunately, right here in Atlanta is one of the hubs for sex trafficking. There are men throughout the country who fly in here to Atlanta every single day just to have sex with an underage child. The issue that we're seeing, and in fact, it was just something that came up just, I think, about a month ago, where they uncovered a 15-year-old girl who had been lured into the sex trafficking world, and they found dozens and dozens of videos of her online, and that's how they were able to track her down and find her and rescue her. Again, what's happening, you have kids on their own, locked in their rooms, and you get these young girls, young boys, who they're feeling very isolated, they're feeling very alone, and they're starting to chat with somebody, and this person trying to tell them how special they are, how wonderful they are. They're grooming them. And they're saying, why don't we just get together? Let's meet. And even when they do that, they'll just build them up, and tell them, you know what, you deserve better. You deserve more. I can give you that. And they start bringing this person into their lives, and then before you know it, they have now just carted them off. I don't think a majority of the women, when you talk about sex trafficking, are kidnapped and taken away. There is a lot of that happens. But most of it is done by grooming, where people think, oh, this is going to be a better life for me. There's going to be a better person for me. We see a lot of this with folks, the women who come over from overseas, and they're being told, oh, we're going to get you a job as a nanny. We're going to get you a job as a housekeeper or in a restaurant. And then they come here and they find out that they're going to work in a massage parlor or in a strip club. And they're trapped because now the person has taken away their passport and their visa, and they can't go anywhere. So, yes, this is a huge problem, and I know the president just recently has signed an executive order to get more funding to battle this, and I'm really glad to see that happening. And there's a lot of really good organizations that are out there who are focused on this matter and trying to make a difference.
Well, that's a perfect way to end the show, because you're giving them, again, an opportunity to have hope and to understand a little bit more about the subject matter, which is so traumatic and so sad. So I want you to tell our audience, again, the name of your book, how they get your book, a little bit more about your workshops so that they know what they're what's in store for them. Eddie, give them all that information and education to our audience, and then we'll finish the show. And
I would love to. I'd love to, and thank you for the opportunity. The name of the book is Going Deeper: How the Inner Child Impacts Your Sexual Addiction. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, A-Books, almost any online book retail outlet is there. However, if they also want to go to my website, which is www.innerchild-sexaddiction. So it's innerchild-sexaddiction.com. On there, they have a link that will take them to the book. And on there also is an online recovery program. So there aren't that many specialists in the country who deal with sexual and pornography addiction. And one thing I get a lot of calls from are people who are in certain parts of the country that they can't get that help. So now what I have here is an online program consisting of different videos. It's a 12-week program that I put together with various videos. They're all about 45 minutes long, and I walk you through the book and the whole recovery process. So that's available for them. And again, that's at www.innerchild-sexaddiction.com.
Well, My guest today has been Eddie Capparucci, who is a really interesting man who offers the public a fabulous opportunity to cure or to understand a little bit more about pornography and addictions. And I think, Eddie, that it's very important. I'd like to give my guest the last word. Is there something that we can leave the audience with that you think will, give them a chance to really understand a little bit more?
Yeah, I want to go back to what you brought up twice, Susan, and that is a sense of hope. The people who are dealing with sexual addiction and pornography addiction, they're living in the dark. They are hiding this from people. And some of them feel like they're the only ones in the world that have this problem, and they're not by far, as I mentioned before. I would encourage them to step out of that darkness, go into the light, tell somebody, talk to somebody, look for some help, because help is available. And yes, you can manage it. And even if you have been struggling for a long time, even if you've tried other techniques to manage your addiction, there still is hope, especially with the inner child recovery process, because we got to drill down deeper, and we have to understand that the road to recovery goes through our childhood.
Well, this has been a very educational and informative show. And next time, in show number 2 of this series, he's going to be talking about a new therapy for treating sex and porn addiction. And I'm so happy that you came on and talked a little bit about a subject that most people don't understand, and now they may understand a lot more. Thank you, Eddie, for being with the Susan Brender Show. It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me.